They saw Limp and thought they knew her story. A broken soldier. A woman past her prime. But that limp? It wasn't weakness. It was the scar of a night she'd never speak of, until danger came home. And what no one saw was the enemy she had just outsmarted. If you love true stories of grit, courage, and standing up when the world doubts you, make sure you like this video. Share it with a friend who loves a good fight for justice, and hit that bell icon so you never miss what's coming next. Now, let's step into Mason Creek, where a quiet morning on Main Street was about to turn into a fight for one woman's past and the future of everyone in town. The summer heat hung low over Mason Creek, a quiet town tucked between rolling farmland and the steady hum of a military base just outside the city limits. On Main Street, folks knew each other by name. They waved from porches, stopped for long talks in the grocery store aisle, and shared pies at the church potluck. But not everyone here belonged. Not really. Serena Holt knew that better than anyone. She'd moved to Mason Creek 6 years ago, after taking a medical retirement from the Army. Most people in town knew bits of her story: the limp she carried, the cane she sometimes used, the way she avoided talking about her last deployment. But rumors filled the gaps she didn't. Some said she'd tripped in training. Others swore she'd been reckless, got herself shot, and then rode a pity wave into a pension. In a small town, people didn't always need the truth to make up their minds. This morning, she walked down the sidewalk toward Benny's Cafe, her right leg stiff, the limp noticeable on each step. A group of men in dusty baseball caps stood outside the hardware store. One of them, Ray Miller, a retired mechanic with more opinions than friends, nodded toward her. "Look at her," he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. "Army couldn't keep her in shape, huh? Bet that limp's worth a nice fat check every month." The others chuckled. Serena kept walking. She'd learned a long time ago that meeting those words head-on only gave them more fuel. Inside Benny's, the air was cool, filled with the smell of strong coffee and sizzling bacon. She ordered her breakfast to go, scanning the room out of habit. Years of military work had taught her to read people like terrain, mapping out threats and intentions before they became real. At a corner table, a young man she didn't recognize sat alone, nursing a cup of coffee. His eyes flicked up when she walked in, then quickly down to the table again. He was too clean-cut for a drifter, but his hands strong, quick, fidgeted with the mug handle like he couldn't decide whether to grip or let go. Serena got her food and stepped outside. The group of men was gone. The street was quiet. Halfway to her truck, she heard the faintest metallic clink behind her, not the sound of coins or keys, but the unmistakable slide of a gun's safety being switched. Her heart rate didn't spike. It didn't need to. Instead, she angled her body just enough to glance in a store window and catch the reflection. The young man from the cafe had stepped outside, one hand buried in his jacket. His eyes were locked on the alley beside the bank. And there, in the shadow between the brick walls, was another man, barely visible, holding something small and black against the ribs of a uniformed soldier. A soldier from the base, Serena's. Limp carried her forward, slow and unthreatening, like she was just a woman heading to her truck. She counted her steps, letting her body sway in rhythm, masking the way her left hand slid quietly inside her bag, finding the grip of the small .38 she still carried for personal reasons. The young man didn't notice her glance. His focus was fixed on the alley, his jaw tight, like he was waiting for a signal. In Mason Creek, people saw her limp. They saw a woman past her prime, marked by some unlucky injury. What they didn't see was the enemy she'd just spotted, or the fact that she'd been here before. Serena kept her pace steady, her cane clicking softly against the concrete. The trick was to look harmless. Nothing about her limp suggested she could be a problem. That's what she counted on. The man in the alley pressed the pistol harder into. The young soldier sighed. She could see the soldier's shoulders stiffen, his eyes locked straight ahead. No sudden movements. He was young, couldn't have been more than 20, and judging by the patch on his sleeve, fresh out of training. Serena's fingers curled around the .38, the weight familiar. She didn't want to use it, but she knew too well that sometimes wanting didn't matter. She reached the mouth of the alley and turned slightly, just enough to take in the scene without raising suspicion. The older man, stocky, shaved head, dark jacket, noticed her first. His eyes narrowed. "Keep moving." "Lady," he barked out. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "Hot morning for trouble." He jerked the pistol toward her. "I said keep moving." The young man from the cafe suddenly appeared behind her, stepping into the alley. "I got her," he said quickly, but not to Serena. His voice was directed. "At the gunman. She's nobody. I'll get her out of here." Serena's mind worked fast. The two men knew each other. That meant this wasn't some random street crime. "Small town like this," she said. "You boys really think you can hide?" The younger man's eyes flashed in warning. "Walk away," he hissed. "You don't know what's going on." She tilted her head like she was considering it. Her right hand, still hidden in her bag, shifted her gun's position. "You're right," she said. "I don't, but I know enough to see when a soldier's about to get shot." The older man's patience snapped. "That's it," he growled, yanking the young soldier forward by his collar dot. In that second, Serena's training took over. She stepped forward with her good leg, pivoted hard, and slammed the cane's hooked handle into the older man's wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. The young soldier jerked free. Serena shoved him toward the street. "Go, call base security." The young man from the cafe lunged for her, but she sidestepped just enough to send his momentum into the brick wall. He staggered, cursing. The older man scrambled for his gun, but Serena's cane came down hard across his knuckles. He howled, in pain, clutching his hand. For a moment, it was quiet, except for Serena's own breathing. Then, from farther down the alley, another voice called out. Deep, calm, and too steady to be anything but trouble. "Miss Holt," it said. "Didn't expect to see you again." She froze. That voice belonged to someone from her past. Someone she'd hoped she'd never cross paths with again. Serena's grip on the cane tightened. That voice hadn't crossed her path in nearly 8 years, but some things stick in the bones. She turned toward the sound, slow, deliberate. A tall man stepped out from the shadows at the far end of the alley. Sunlight caught the faint scar running from his temple to his jaw. His hair was shorter than she remembered, but his eyes were the same, sharp, cold, and calculating. "Colonel Vance," she said flatly, the young soldier she'd sent. Running had stopped at the street corner, unsure whether to leave or watch. Serena flicked her eyes toward him. "Go!" she barked. He hesitated only a second before sprinting away. Vance stepped closer, ignoring the injured man still cradling his busted hand. "Still giving orders, I see," he said. "Even after everything." Serena didn't flinch. "You're a long way from where we left off." His smile was slow, like a snake uncoiling. "And yet, here we are, same town, same bad timing." He glanced at the younger man from the cafe. "You were supposed to keep this quiet." The younger man, now with blood on his lip from hitting the wall, muttered, "She's faster." "And she looks." Vance's gaze returned to Serena. "I could ask what you're doing here, but I already know. You've got that nose for trouble." She raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I was about to say the same about you." For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt heavy, like old history pressing in. Serena remembered the last time she'd Seen him. A night in Kandahar. A botched mission. And a choice that had left her wounded, and him with a reputation he didn't deserve, but gladly took. That limp of hers? She'd earned it trying to drag 2 men to safety. One of them made it out. The other didn't. And somewhere in that mess, Vance had used her injury to cover his own failure. "You're running something through this town," she said. "And you just tried to take a soldier off base. Tell me I'm wrong." Vance's smile didn't waver. "You've got it backward. I'm saving that soldier. You wouldn't understand?" "Try me," she said. He stepped closer until they were just a few feet apart. "You think you're still the hero. But heroes get people killed. You taught me that." The older man on the ground groaned, clutching his hand. The younger man shifted his weight, like he was ready to make another move if Vance signaled. Serena weighed her options. She could walk away now, call base security, and let them sort it out. But deep down she knew, once Vance was involved, the truth had layers, and walking away would mean never finding out who was really in danger. There was that other thing, a promise she'd made years ago, standing beside the grave of the soldier who hadn't made it home. She'd said she'd never let the same kind of thing happen again. She straightened, Kane steady at her side. "Then I guess I'm in it," she said. Vance's expression shifted, not surprise, but something like calculation. "You always did have a death wish." From the street came the sound of approaching sirens. Not base security. Town police. Vance looked past her, toward the sound. "Looks like we'll be talking later." By the time the sirens reached the alley, he and his men were gone. Serena stood there, pulse steady, wondering if she'd just stepped into the middle of something far bigger than a street scuffle. The flashing red and blue lights painted the alley walls in slow, steady pulses. 2 Mason Creek officers stepped out of their cruiser, hands resting near their belts. "You okay, Mom?" Officer Jennings asked, his voice carrying that mix of small-town concern and suspicion. Serena nodded. "I'm fine." Jennings glanced around. "We got a call about a disturbance. 3 suspects?" "They're gone," she said simply. The younger officer, Morales, walked over to the dropped pistol. "This one's military issue," he murmured. "Serial number scratched." Jennings looked back at Serena. "Want to tell me what happened?" She hesitated. In the Army, she'd learned to measure what to say and when. Right now, telling the whole truth would only send the police down the wrong trail, and Vance would slip away before anyone realized how dangerous he was. Some guy was hassling a soldier. She said, "I stepped in. They ran." Jennings studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You've still got that spark hold. Just watch yourself. This isn't the base anymore." They took her statement, but she kept it thin on detail. When the cruiser finally rolled away, Serena stood alone on Main Street. The sun had shifted, the heat settling like a heavy blanket. She walked to her truck, the limp more pronounced now. Her leg ached, not from the fight, but from the reminder of what Vance represented. Back at her small house on the edge of town, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold. The silence pressed in. Mason Creek looked peaceful from here. A few kids riding bikes, the distant hum of a lawnmower, but her gut told her the place was about to become anything but. She opened the drawer by her phone and pulled out a weathered notebook. Flipping past grocery lists and half-finished letters, she found the page she'd written the night she left the Army. "Vance, if he surfaces, he's not alone." "Never work alone." Her pen tapped the page. She knew exactly who to call. 10 minutes later, the voice of Daniel Reese crackled through the line. He was an old friend from her unit, one of the few who'd stayed in contact. "Reese," she said. "Vance is here, in Mason Creek." There was a long silence. Then, "You sure?" "I saw him. And he had 2 men trying to pull a soldier off base. Reese swore under his breath. That's bad. Last I heard, he was working with a private security outfit, the kind that sells muscle to the highest bidder. I figured as much, Serena said. But why here? Why now? That base outside town. There's a shipment moving soon. Classified. Rumor is it's high-value equipment. Could be what he's after. Serena's stomach tightened. If Vance was targeting a shipment like that, the soldier in the alley might have been a pawn or a problem Vance needed to remove. Reese's voice dropped. You want me to come out there? Not yet, she said. If he thinks I'm working alone, I might get close enough to see what he's planning. Serena, I know what I'm doing, she cut in. And I owe him. When she hung up, she looked out the window. Down the street, a black SUV rolled slowly past. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Her fingers curled into a fist. She could feel it. The game had already started, and this time she wasn't going to be the one limping away. The next morning, Mason Creek woke to a cool breeze and the faint smell of rain, but Serena felt the air tightening around her. Trouble wasn't on the horizon. It was already here. She parked her old Chevy pickup across from the military bases. Southgate, sipping coffee from a paper cup, keeping her head down. From here, she could see trucks rolling in and out, soldiers checking IDs, and the rhythm of a place where every movement meant something. At 9:14 a.m., a black SUV, same make and tint as the one from the night before, pulled up to the far fence line just outside base property. It stayed there for less than 2 minutes before easing away. Serena noted the plates. They were clean, too clean. She'd seen that before in Afghanistan. Vehicles used for operations where no one wanted a trail. By noon, she'd moved to Benny's Cafe again, sitting in the corner booth with a newspaper she wasn't reading. The young man from the cafe, Vance's runner, walked in, looked around, and slid into a booth with a man she didn't recognize. The stranger had the kind of build that came from more than just a gym. Broad shoulders, narrow eyes, skin tanned in a way that spoke of work done far from this small town. She listened without appearing to. Their voices were low, but in a quiet cafe, low voices still carried. Tonight, the runner was saying, convoy's moving out at 2,300. Vance says we hit the choke point on County Road 12. Minimal escort. The other man grunted. You? Sure the gear's what he says it is? A pause. Does it matter? Serena folded her paper, slid a 10 under her coffee cup, and left without looking back. She'd heard enough to know exactly what they were after, and exactly when they planned to move. That night, she drove the back roads toward County Road 12. The choke point was a narrow stretch where 2 old bridges funneled traffic into a thea. Single lane before curving back into open road. Perfect for an ambush, if you wanted something off a military truck without drawing attention in town. She parked a half-mile away and moved on foot. Her limp made her slower than she liked, but she knew how to work with it, shifting weight so she could keep quiet. At 22:45, the night was still. No wind, no headlights yet. But in the dark, just beyond the bridge, she caught the faint glint of metal, the muzzle of a rifle, low and steady. Her gut told her she had 2 choices: pull back and call it in, or step in now and risk being outnumbered. Before help could arrive, she was reaching for her phone when a voice whispered from behind her, close enough that she could feel the breath. Didn't I tell you we'd talk later? She turned her head slowly. Vance stood there, calm as a man, waiting for a bus. The glow from a distant farm light caught his smile. You don't give up, he said. Neither do you, Serena replied. Vance glanced toward the bridge. You can't stop this Holt, even if you wanted to. I've stopped worse, he chuckled. Maybe once. But you're not the same. That leg? He let his words trail. Slows you down. Serena's heart rate stayed even. Funny thing about a limp, she said. People see it and think it means you can't fight. But they forget, I only limp after I'm done. For the first time, his smile faltered. Down the road, headlights appeared. The convoy. Serena knew she had seconds to act, and no guarantee she'd get another chance. The hum of the approaching convoy filled the night air. 2 trucks, low and heavy, moved steadily toward the choke point, headlights washing over the asphalt. Serena kept her eyes on Vance, reading his stance the way she used to read the wind. Before a shot, somewhere ahead, hidden among the brush and shadow, his men waited. She could sense them, patient, ready. You step aside, Vance said quietly, and I'll let you walk away. No one has to get hurt tonight. Serena's gaze didn't waver. You always were a liar. Before he could reply, she shifted her weight and swung her cane up in a sharp arc, catching him across the jaw. The crack of impact echoed off the trees. He stumbled back, cursing, and she was already moving. Her phone was in her hand, the emergency line open. Convoy, this is Holt. Ambush at County 12. Armed men, bridge ahead. Stop, the lead trucks. Brakes screeched. Soldiers spilled out, rifles at the ready, sweeping the tree line with practiced precision. The quiet exploded. Muzzle flashes burst from the brush, followed by shouts and return fire. The air filled with the sharp tang of gunpowder. Serena dropped to one knee behind the guardrail, sighting down her .38. One of Vance's men broke from cover, moving toward the rear truck. She fired once, a clean shot to his shoulder, and he went down, weapons skittering across the asphalt. Vance was already running, using the chaos as cover. Serena pushed up from the rail, her legs screaming in protest, but she didn't stop. She closed the distance, her limp giving her rhythm rather than slowing her. He reached the tree line just as she caught him. She grabbed the back of his jacket, yanking him hard enough to send him sprawling. You don't get to walk away this time, she said, breath steady. He laughed, even as soldiers closed in. You think you've beaten me? You've just scratched the surface. Serena knelt beside him, eyes locked on his. Maybe, but tonight you lose. The soldiers took him, hands zip-tied behind his back. The rest of his crew was already on. The ground, weapons kicked aside. As the convoy rolled on, an officer approached Serena. Ma'am, the base commander wants to thank you in person. She shook her head. Not tonight. I just want to go home. The officer gave her a curious look, but didn't press back at her truck. She eased into the seat, letting the night air wash over her. The ache in her leg was deep, but so was the quiet satisfaction in her chest. She thought of Ray Miller and the other men outside the hardware store, laughing at her limp. Let them keep their stories. They'd never know what really happened on County Road 12, but word travels in small towns, and by morning the story would spread anyway. People would say she'd been in the middle of it, that she'd stopped something. Big, and maybe, just maybe, they'd stop seeing the limp as weakness, because what they didn't see was the enemy she had just outsmarted.